Hello.
Oh, are we calm today?
No. Hello.
And welcome, or welcome back to Party Chick Astrology. I'm Nina.
I'm Shaina.
And this is a video that I doubt there are very many of.
No.
Because who dedicates an entire video to just Uranus in the 8th? I guess someone who has Uranus in the 8th.
I don't know. I figured we should each dedicate it. I feel weird doing it, and I felt weird doing it in the first place, but I was like, I know I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
With Uranus in the 8th house, I mean, it's kind of like in the statement, but it was the one I didn't understand the most about or knew the least about. And when I read about it, like online, it's a very,
Who knows, really?
yeah, it's a very like shallow perspective of it. And there's only been one article that I really liked on it, and I always reference this article in our birth chart readings if this placement is brought up, but I'm going to link it down below because it's the article that I was like, oh, now I get this placement. All that articles really say are like, you like to talk about the taboo, a random inheritance, and you like change for the sake of change. And that was kind of the only things that I would get from them. It's a lot.
We got a lot more.
Yeah.
This much more points at timestamp.
So much more that I actually wrote out this like long essay about it.
I just like to calm myself out for a second. Is it not the most Uranus in the 8th house thing to write a whole fucking essay? It was like 10 pages, that bullshit. Like single spaced about this placement. Is that like really getting into things like manically and like trying to uncover every single angle possible? So I literally like did myself in this video without realizing it. Just to prove astrology is real. Wanted to make that point.
If you have not watched our first The 8th House in Astrology video, we highly recommend you watch that to understand what the 8th house means in astrology. If for some reason you're watching this and you don't have Uranus in the 8th, we have a video for Sun in the 8th and a video describing Moon through Pluto in the 8th. If you don't have any planets in the 8th house, we have a blog post on our website, partychickastrology.com, that is breaking down the house cusps of every 8th house cusp.
Partychickastrology.com/shop.
We have
where you
our
get your
astrology
stuff.
course, birth chart readings, and we have an Instagram.
Okay, so the biggest thing with Uranus in the 8th house that I feel myself creeping into at this very moment is like, pshaw, everything's fine, is a major detachment to all 8th house matters. So there is some stuff that I am actually going to read. I know that's weird. I want to put it out there because my Uranus is in my 8th house, but my Uranus is in Aquarius, and my 8th house is ruled by Aquarius, so it is very Aquarian.
Aquarius.
Yeah. My interpretation might be a little bit more extreme than yours.
You might have more flavor to it.
Yes, and I also have a Scorpio interception, so if you have Scorpio in other places, this might take away a bit of the detachment, as extreme as I have it.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a cold and calculated attitude towards death.
Exactly,
almost.
yeah.
Even if you accept it at all, you don't allow yourself to emotionally go there, process.
So Uranus in the 8th house has this incredible and somewhat scary ability to detach. From the outside, someone with Uranus in the 8th house will seem cold and unaffected by the darkness of the world around them, almost to the point that you wonder if they can even understand or comprehend the weight that things or situations carry. They may seem cold, detached, and almost empty when it comes to 8th house matters like death and sex. This is not because we don't feel those things or have never experienced them. Quite the opposite. Uranus in the 8th can have a higher capacity comparing to an empty 8th house.
Yeah.
I would like to specify. Uranus in the 8th house actually has a much higher capacity and ability to get so deep and look so far into the most taboo things in this world because we can detach from them and look at them from such a unique, rational, and separated point of view. Very much this placement will bring your life kind of into a constant state of chaos. So you become so comfortable in constant change, chaos, and abnormal situations and stuff like that that it becomes your normal. And so things that might seem weird or a surprise or a shock to people are very like expected. And so when something unexpected happens, like this big tragic event or blah 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 blah, you're like, yeah, of course, like the Uranus in the 8th house is like, duh. Like, of course that kind of shit happens. Like, this is life. That's the turbulence and unexpectedness of life, that you're almost always prepared for that shit because you're so
detached
and used to it.
Yeah.
You're expecting constant chaotic change with that kind of stuff.
But like, for example, the burning down of the Notre Dame, a lot of people had very emotional reactions to that, really tied their memories back to that. And that was completely unexpected. It's not something that you necessarily expect, but because Uranus in the 8th house kind of has this view of, well,
the world is
death
chaos.
and change does happen unexpectedly.
Yeah, exactly.
Expect the unexpected.
Exactly. That's another thing about Uranus in the 8th is like the last way that you want to die is through like slow decay. Like, I've always had the thought of like, I better go quick, fast, and painless. Like Nina said, a very detached view of death. I've never had a fear of death. I'm scared of like everything ever, especially as a kid. I was terrified of the weirdest things.
Taxidermy.
And that again is like Uranus in the 8th. At least my perspective is like, you don't know when you're dying, and if you're the one dying, then you don't have to deal with the repercussions of somebody else dying. From a very young age, I was like, if I had to choose me or my parents to die, I'd choose me, because then I wouldn't have to deal with my parents not being here and me being alive. When you die, you don't know, really, you know? Like, you're just dead. You don't have to deal with it anymore. You don't know that you're dead. You're just gone. When you're around it, they have to deal with the repercussions, and that's emotional stuff you don't want to deal with as Uranus in the 8th house.
A lot of people will be like, I just want to have some final closure or say my goodbyes before I go.
Yeah.
That's not something you're bothered about.
No. And Uranus in the 8th definitely does kind of give a little bit of a guarantee of a quick and fast death, which when I read I was so thankful for. Also, I think that people haven't thought about is that totally most likely to end up on like the 100 weird ways to die.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if you didn't get a laugh out of the way that I died.
I think Uranus in the 8th actually is most likely to die from a school shooting because it's unexpected and it involves peers.
Oh, that's
friends.
true. Like being in a mass situation, that could totally happen. Like a group shooting.
Yeah. So I'm like, nobody else has an apartment like mine.
Yeah.
Like, nobody else has a death like mine.
Exactly. Uranus in the 8th house is weird. We aren't like the tee-hee, lol, I'm so weird, I do such quirky little weird things. Like, no, we're fucking weirdos down to our core, to the point
you need to hide it.
You need to hide it, and that you aren't even aware of what's normal. Like, I found myself growing up having such a struggle, and I don't such a struggle, but like, I was an only child, and I didn't really have anybody else to look to for what was a normal way to act or not. I felt very much on my own, and I had no natural inclination. I couldn't figure out if it was weird to pee in the shower as a kid or not. And like, I was very much self-conscious because I was like, what is the society, like, what is it okay to do? Because, you know, I used to pee in the shower as a kid, and then one friend told me that that was weird, and then another friend and group of people said that's weird that I didn't pee in the shower, so what's the normal thing to do? And it's kind of like you take that and put it to literally everything. It's like, what is the normal thing to do? I don't know, so the best thing that I can do is do what my impulse is, and your impulse will almost always somehow be the weird thing.
If Uranus is hidden in any way, whether it's retrograde or intercepted or in the 8th house or even in the 12th house, there is this just like unawareness of what's weird and what's normal. That is why you behave like weirdly, because you don't know what's weird, but that's also why you don't share much of your individuality, because you don't know what's normal.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Something I felt ever since a child is that anyone who is really weird by like societal standpoints does not like being called weird, because the weirdness follows them everywhere and they do not need someone else to point it out or verify it. In fact, quite the opposite. Uranus in the 8th, people are obsessively going to hide how weird they are because of how naturally it is painted all over them. And that's something that I definitely felt as a kid. I hated growing up because I felt like when we were like in the MySpace elementary school days, at least for me, it was like definitely very trendy to be weird, and it drove me crazy because everybody that was weird was so goddamn normal, and they'd always be like, I am the weirdest. Like, do you guys know that like I eat this with a spoon instead of a fork? And it's like, and it would drive me
so
crazy.
Random!
Because then I would do something that was like socially weird and inappropriate, and then they'd get on my ass about it like the next second. And that's another thing about Uranus in the 8th house is you feel like you can never just like skid by on your weird things. Like, yeah, it's weird. It feels like somebody always has to point it out. You can't just do something. It has to be pointed out and showed to you and almost like pointed the finger at you that is weird.
But you're trying to avoid that.
Yeah, and you're obsessively trying to avoid that, and so that's going to really like shelter your individuality. Okay, so if your Uranus is positively aspected, which mine is positively aspected, I've always loved how weird I am. It's always been my favorite thing about me, and I've always had great inner self-confidence from it, but the second I step outside, I hate it. The second people are around me, I don't like it. They make me feel weird about it. I feel like I need to hide it for them and them only. Like, you know, my parents sometimes would say like, oh, this is good. Like, we like that you're an individual, right? But then when it was like the wrong thing to show, it feels like there's very much like, there's like a good weird in this world and a bad weird in this world, and Uranus in the 8th definitely feels like a bad weird. If Uranus is negatively aspected from the second you were born, you had weirdo painted on your forehead, and everybody, including yourself and everybody that you were closest to, made you feel like a complete shit about it. And you probably really have a bad relationship with how odd you are, and you do not see it as any sort of power positivity, but as like a major social hindrance. And my Uranus is positively aspected, and of course I can definitely get into the state quite a bit as well, but it's more of like a passing thing. You know what I mean?
You still have that
I still have the inner confidence there, but if it's negative, I feel like it's just all kind of hatred of it. Another big thing, and what I found interesting because it reinforced this, was that Uranus in the 8th is going to be very misunderstood, because the Scorpio house is already misunderstood. Anything in the 8th house is misunderstood innately, and so putting Uranus in there, it's just kind of like a double whammy. That's why I find that the articles don't do it justice, is it kind of backs up that fact of like, even people in astrology are misunderstanding it. I can't talk about this placement without talking about this, because it is such an obvious manifestation of extreme Aquarian energy, which is like my autism, and the fact that I didn't find out about my autism until I was 21. If you have Uranus in the 8th house, don't think that you automatically have autism, because the two don't go hand in hand, but
it can be one indicating factor to many.
Yes, exactly. And also, because you don't have Uranus in the 8th doesn't mean that you're not autistic. Because like, I know somebody who's autistic that has it in the 1st, you know, but they've always been diagnosed. Like, they were diagnosed as a kid, everybody knows they're autistic, it's just kind of common knowledge. Right. But whereas for me, I obsessively hid it as a child, and I still do to a certain extent, but it was very conscious and obsessive and carefully calculated as a kid.
It's another like hidden thing from yourself. Like, you didn't know what was going on, what was making you so weird.
Yeah. I definitely have vivid memories growing up of just these thoughts that would pass me kind of by, like float in, of like, one day I'll figure this out. Like, wow, I can't wait until one day I know this. I think that's a very true statement for any planet in the 8th house.
Just like having this intuition of there's something more.
Yeah.
And whatever's in your 8th house is what's more.
Exactly. So I started to suspect my autism in August of 2017, and I didn't tell anybody, which is very 8th house themed. And when I did find out about my autism, I struggled a lot with obviously the fact that I didn't know earlier. That was like the main thing, was like, I wish I would have known as a child. I wish I would have known at least before I went into high school, and blah, 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 blah. There is that desperate search to like find something or someone to blame. I could be like, how did my parents not see it? Like, how did my teachers not see it? I was the one holding the key, making sure to my utmost extent that nobody saw it. This is just a little thing that's a little bit off the branch, but the only thing that's kind of helped me at all, except the fact that I can't go back, my issue was that I didn't have anybody or anything I could forgive. And so I heard somebody be like, you need to forgive life. And when I heard that, I was like, that was like a major thing that was like completely reprogrammed my thought process around it, because I was like, oh, I can do that. Like, I can forgive life. Like, I don't need to blame somebody or something. I can just be like, that's what happened. And there's something very healing about that. And I think since then, I've been dwelling a lot less on the fact that I didn't know sooner.
Yeah, with the 8th house, whatever damage you're holding in your 8th house, you can dwell on. I mean, it's already like a big thing to find the root of your suffering in the 8th house. Finding like the planet or whatever. And then you just want to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper until you have some kind of like justification, some kind of purpose, reasoning, because the 8th house is very existential.
Absolutely.
So with Uranus in the 8th house, if you find whatever you can
pin it on,
pin your weirdness on, your being different, maybe it is autism, maybe it's just the way that someone made fun of you, and then you want to put it on that someone that made fun of you.
Yeah, this is a big placement of like hiding your sexual orientation or your gender or just anything that society deems like this is not acceptable, kind of by the confines of what type of person you should be.
This could even be something you'd like literally kinks.
The camera cut out and I never got back to this point. Basically, Uranus in the 8th house, of course, comes with some weird kinks, but they're much more like Aquarius version of kink. Weird and like group, you know what I mean? Because Aquarius is like community, right? And also Aquarius doesn't like any kind of labels. So that's why these are the people most likely to kind of be more open to experimentation, just out of the curiosity, just because you don't really put barriers on your sexuality like that, and you don't judge people who put barriers. In fact, why are there barriers for anybody's anything? Anyways, and because, you know you're a little bit of a weirdo, you are accepting towards other people's weirdo stuff. I mean, it doesn't even have to just be sexually, it's just in general. Like, when somebody shares a weird trait or something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you are, like, more than happy to hear it, and you're probably gonna be like, ugh, you know, like, that's just humans. Like, thank you, you're doing something weird I don't do that makes me feel human because I know I do stuff that you don't do, right? Yeah. Okay, bye.
A random inheritance is something that might come about, or just like random and unexpected and inconsistent, like financials. Unpredictable. But money does come to you in very weird ways. Very true to Uranus in the 8th house. This is like a very personal thing, but I do kind of want to talk about it a little bit. Like, I don't like talking about financials like we said in the video, just because this was like just the ultimate like Uranus in the 8th house experience. And I also Pluto conjunct my sun and moon at this point as well, which was what I think knocked it all off. Yeah. But when I found out about my autism, I definitely sunk obviously way down into the 8th house, because that was like the planet that I was dealing with, and I got the most unmotivated I ever have been, and I really did not have the ability in me to hold down a job for multiple reasons. A lot of them just because I was unable to really deal with people.
Also sati.
Also, a few months before that, I lost both of my grandmas within 6 days of each other. One was expected, but the second one was completely random. Not completely random, I mean, it's still a grandma. She was still unhealthy, but we just found her on the floor one day. So I had no grandparents. You know, with that comes now it's time to distribute the all of their money from both sides. Because of that, I wound up getting an inheritance that I was not expecting, that I did not know existed. And it was because of that money that I had gotten that I was able to not have a full-time job, and that really saved me, and I was just very lucky. And I think that comes with a positively aspected Uranus.
So it was death and rebirth and an unexpected inheritance.
Exactly.
All rolled into one.
Exactly. But with that comes an immense amount of guilt. So the entire time that I was doing that, I just felt like the worst piece of shit. And I felt like the laziest. Kind of like, I'm such a lucky bastard, I don't deserve this kind of situation. Yeah.
That's some Capricorn.
that's what I wrote. I was like, that's some Capricorn shit. Definitely. Also, a big thing of Uranus in the 8th house, and another reason why I was undiagnosed for so long with my autism, is invalidation. Basically, you detach from everything and invalidate nearly every traumatic thing that you encounter, because it almost feels like it's your responsibility to do so. Uranus does not like to dwell, it is forever changing, and I will punish myself constantly for feeling any negative emotions surrounding my trauma. Because you're constantly be like, I should be over it, I should be over it, I should move on, I should move on, I should move on.
Uranus is the planet of revolution. So it's literally get over it, move on.
Also, this is definitely a placement of somebody who's their own therapist. You can't give advice to Uranus in the 8th house about that stuff. If I'm coming to you with something, I have looked at it from every single angle. Yeah.
You've diagnosed yourself. You know exactly, because like the 8th house is a detective. You've already gone to the root of the problem. You know why it's happening.
I've changed it because I have Capricorn. I'm like, I've already changed it by the time, like, I have fixed this situation by the time I sit in that desk. I'm like, oh yeah, that horrible thing that I've been going through for months that I haven't talked about. Oh, let me talk to you about it now because I've gotten over it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna bring it up if I haven't already completely detached myself from it.
Yeah.
And can talk about it in a very cold, calculated kind of way.
Exactly.
Therapists typically react with, how does that make you feel? And like listen.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I've never given productive advice. Sitting in therapy, I kind of feel this because I have Aquarius ruling the 8th house.
Yeah.
So sitting in therapy, I would be like, yeah, but can we just like move on?
Yes! They would dwell on things for too long that I was like, I'm already over this.
And also there is that very calculated way of thinking about it.
Oh, yeah.
Where I always got tripped up of like, okay, but you have to be on my side. I'm paying you to be on my side.
Oh.
I've been gaslighted a lot in my life. I would go to therapy being like, am I crazy or am I right? And they'd be like, you're not crazy. I'm like, I'm paying you to say this. It means nothing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I found that I did get good advice from this one therapist that I had, but she is also a Capricorn moon, Cancer rising, so it was good advice because I had told myself that advice a week ago. You know what I mean? I'm sitting here like sad as shit, like please help me, but there's nothing that you can say because I've already outthought myself. You know? Major Outcast themes. I was really good at attaching to one person, but I would feel completely isolated from all of the other people involved. I kind of feel like the outcast and the tag along, that I was only brought to this because I'm friends with the main girl of the group. You know what I mean? Or growing up, whatever group I would get into, I always, you know, had some melodramatic story of them not liking me anymore, not telling me they didn't like me, silently kind of shunning me out, and then me not getting it because, especially as a young age, I just remember being like, not being able to understand that was happening because I was not able to pick up on those cues that like, oh, when they say they're busy, they're not busy, they don't want to hang out with me. I would never get that. I thought, I was like, why are my friends always so busy? So you just get more manic and more panicked to hang out with them, that I would be very desperate, and that of course is just gonna like make people push you away even more. And then I would finally like, something would click and I'd go, oh, they don't like me anymore. Oh, and then it's just like this deep shame and embarrassment that just kind of like floods you when you realize that. And that definitely has ingrained in me, and that adds to that Uranus in the 8th house detachment of like, I need to be ready for my friends and loved ones that I have, you know, soul bonded with. I need to be ready for these people to leave me at any time. Not always, because I have to say, Nina's one of the few people that I don't feel that way with, which I'm very thankful for. But almost everybody in my life, I've definitely felt this desperation. It's that 8th house thing of like, you'll make issues that don't exist. So if I do something that's, you know, Uranus in the 8th house and it's fucking weird and da-da-da-da, then I'll just automatically assume they don't want to be friends with me anymore.
I get prepared, like,
I detach myself. I tell myself all the reasons why I don't like this person and why I'm okay without them, and I need to be mentally prepared for them to leave me so that when they do, I don't get hurt again.
And this is like even something that's not Uranus in the 8th house, whatever you have in the 8th house, like whatever is your damage.
Yeah.
Whenever that comes up, you're like, oh, gotta prepare for everything to be taken away from me. And you've also been the person at times to break off something that isn't serving you. And that's exactly it, that isn't serving you. That not in like that selfish, like you need to serve me to be my friend. Because Uranus is about like moving things forward. And just like being better and bigger and like
making the changes necessary.
And if someone hasn't been like on that same page with you, you more than me can like
cut it off. Yes. Without even trying to emotionally detach, I will.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like I still like can hold on to that.
And again, like, you know what I mean, that comes from the pain of like, I hung on to unsuccessful friendships and stayed in unsuccessful friendships for way too long as a kid. And so it's just like, I'm not letting myself get into that again.
Yeah, just moving on to the bigger and better.
Okay, so I just wrote a little like smash quick little list of things. Intuition comes with the 8th house. So with Uranus in there, it's kind of weird, it's sporadic, it's uncontrollable, you don't really know where it's coming from. It's very strong, but it's hard to get in touch with because it is so sporadic. It really is hard to trust because it comes and goes. You know,
and you also like very random things. You're just like, I know this is going to happen.
Yes.
Right.
Pluto in the 8th house will be like, I feel this and it's all I feel and I know it to be true. Uranus will be like, and it'll be like, hey, you see that?
What'd you say?
What'd you say? Oh, wait. Astral projection and detachment from the physical. I've always been really good at like being in a situation and like stepping outside my body and being like, bye. This is another one. Success in crowdfunding or online money-making endeavors. Naturally, you're going to be probably accidentally rebellious. I am, but without trying. Like I don't come at it from like a fuck you, like I'm against everything you say because I am. I'm just like, whoops, I'm against everything you say. Fuck. You also feel a need to remain very independent with intimate relationships. I've literally been like, I can't be your friend because you require constant communication. I've had to do that.
It's because like Uranus in the 8th house tempers the way that you view intimate relationships differently. Most 8th house people are really looking for that all and everything. Uranus in the 8th house is the most maybe unintuitive pairing.
For sure. Yeah,
it's squares because Uranus rules Aquarius.
Yeah.
Aquarius squares Scorpio, which rules the 8th house. Intimate relationships to you still have this Aquarian flair of just independence. There is this quote that really rubbed me the wrong way as a kid. It was on this t-shirt that this girl would wear all the time, and it said, "There is no place where you end and I begin." And I was like, you might experience, like, I want there to be a place where you end and I begin, and I'm okay with hugging and like becoming one that way.
Yeah.
But I want to still have my own body, my own space, my own,
You have a very odd relationship with sex. You're probably much more detached from the physical act of sex than most people, probably stemming from how scary deep intimacy is to you and how easily you can teach yourself to detach from it. I think these are people that can be the least sexual of the 8th house planets.
It's such an unintuitive place.
Yeah, like Uranus in the 8th can seem less like an 8th house person than somebody with an empty 8th house because they're so strongly detached from everything of the house that's so attached. Yeah, so there's comfort in the detachment, and this is the unhealthy detachment. To be able to really hone in and explore your sexuality, you need to address whatever reason your Uranus is in the 8th house in the first place. If you refuse to acknowledge it, you'll probably go through life without much sex because of how easily you can detach yourself from your sexual impulses. Probably found out about sex at a very weird time or in a weird way, like wrong place, wrong time. Another thing is that anytime a traumatic event occurs, instead of having to relive it and remember it and constantly go through that trauma over and again, you probably quickly learn it's really easy to just forget it. So like when I found out my grandma died, I'm like, I'm not gonna tell anybody because that's acknowledging it. So if I just don't acknowledge it, then like nobody knows what happened, so therefore I can, invalidate it.
If a tree falls and no one's around to hear it.
Exactly.
It doesn't make a sound.
No. You have a very weird and offbeat sexuality. Because of that, very few people are probably going to be interested in you in that way, unless you have other things saying otherwise. When somebody does find you attractive, it is that 8th house, like, oh my god, I love how weird you are. Like, I am so attracted to you because of how different and weird you are.
You can find yourself fetishized. You can find yourself a novelty.
Yes. Also how comfortable you are with how weird you are. Now, some people at the other end of the spectrum will find it very off-putting because it is a fixed sign in a fixed house. So I am weird and I'm unbending on how weird I am, and no matter how much I may hate how weird I am or how much I try to change it, it will never happen. And I've had to accept that from pretty early on. Because of that, I've had to build a lot of internal self-confidence because of how kind of rude people have been and how many times people have asked me to change for them, to just be more normal, and how much I have desperately tried to do that I've realized that it just doesn't work. So I in turn have been given really no other choice but to completely own it, subconsciously most of the time. And for someone to be such a social outcast yet sit so comfortably in that position is intimidating, and it takes a lot of pain and isolation to be able to be comfortable in that, so that when you do finally master that peace in social solace, that's when you know you've really started to unlock a piece of your power. Because as with any placement in the 8th house, your Uranus is your power. Your Uranus is what sets you apart and what makes you you. The paradox of this placement is that all of the power you possess, you will desperately try to detach and distance yourself from. I've always known that once I'm able to really let loose, love, and accept myself and all my quirks, good and bad, that is when I will find true success and happiness in my life. That's the end of that horrible
Mic drop. So I should note that if you're like thinking of like people with Uranus in the 8th house, it's probably not, it's not going to be as obvious to you, even though Shaina's been saying like people always see her as weird and blah blah blah. They're definitely not the type of people who are like very openly raw means I love you or whatever the like trendy weird thing to do is.
Because we're not trendy weird. We wish we could be trendy weird.
It's odd in a different way. And I think the best part about it is that this energy can't help but be sincere. And I think in this day and age, that's actually what we're calling to more and more. We're kind of done with the Gemini, Libra, everything is fine, everything's perfect kind of thing. And I think
the age of Aquarius.
I think really your power as a Uranus in the 8th house is to just be nothing but sincere.
Yeah.
Whatever sincere means to you. And I think, as myself being Aquarius, that is the road to the revolution.
Yeah.
It's to just be sincere, be yourself. There's a quote from one of my favorite bands in one of their songs. It goes, "They can take anything as long as it's true. What they can't take is you telling them lies." And I think that's very much the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
Uranus in the 8th house, like, sure, the truth may not always be pleasant, the truth may not always be comfortable.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point in society where we're kind of really fed up with hearing lies
The
and
comfort,
hearing
yeah.
picture perfect kind of things. We can take anything as long as it's true. So don't be afraid to be your true self.
Yes, that's the moral of this video.
Yes, thesis.
Done.
Don't be afraid to be your true self. As always, check out all the links below. Thank you so much for watching.
Yes. Bye.